t-shirts in the shop. Just go to pgttcm.com. Check out all of our cool t-shirts and stickers. Heck, we even got some shelf curtains in there. Keep clean, look cool, have cool stickers to put on stuff. Join us on Patreon, get a free sticker. Or don't. It's up to you. This episode is brought to you by Donner. Check out the show notes to find a good deal at Donner. Like the sound of this? This is the Donner Island Delay, and the really cool Donner LP that I've shown off on Instagram. Check it out. They've got some really good summer deals, and check out their snap deals as well. Use the link in the show notes to help support the show. Get yourself some cool musical instruments, maybe some patch cords. Cool. This episode is brought to you by California Tea House. California Tea House is a family-owned tea store where you can find some of the world's best loose-leaf tea and organic herbal tea blends. Like a fine wine, there is no comparison between fine loose-leaf and common broken-leaf tea bags. So, check them out. Check them out. They have quite a bit of pretty awesome tea collections. I'm a huge fan of their white teas. They have a tea club that you can join, but, they've got green tea, black tea, white tea, oolong, Robios, and herbal tea. They've also got teaware. So check out California Tea House in the show notes.
You're listening to KZOM, Oleander Public Radio.
Greetings, listeners. It is I, D.B. Spitzer, Informer Dave, here once again to talk to you about the Cthulhu mythos, its books, its monsters, its unfortunate human casualties, its timeline in general, and even its tangential bits, like the dreamlands or things of a weird nature that are Lovecraftian leaning. Once more we head into those dark woods, further feeling those malevolent forces upon us. Once again we walk down the lightless stone staircase in the middle of nowhere.
You're listening to KZOM.
Hey everyone, it is me, DB Spitzer, and to my virtual right, as always, Farmer Dave, David Heath. Dave, how the heck is it going?
It is well, but also a little cold.
Yeah. Freak snowstorm the other day. It's melted pretty much. Down here. Up there, I'm sure it may have.
We got more snow this morning.
You're kidding. We didn't get any down here.
Does this look like a face that is kidding?
No,
it doesn't. For those of you are listening to on the podcast, no, it does not look like a face that is kidding.
On Skype, it looks like a picture of a goat. So.
Yes.
But no, that's crazy. I think we may have gotten a light dusting this morning, but it melted before school. So, my artichoke plant in front of the house got trashed. Just to let people know, I'm not gardening in the graveyard. I'm gardening around the caretaker's house. And, let's see.
Do you call it Artie?
No, I do not.
Oh. Next time I go to your house, I'm going to call it Artie.
Okay. And let's see. It's April. Everyone's getting their taxes done, so that kind of will timestamp when this episode happened. Dave, did you get all your taxes done?
Oh crap! No, I haven't.
Oh shoot!
It's like March, right? But, okay.
Yeah.
I will go and I've got the weekend to fill out my extension.
Okay, cool. And I make so little money, I just fill out an easy form online and zip it in, and they're like, here's your $50, and I'm like, yeah. No, it's more than $50, but I'm not going to disclose that information to the public anyway, because they can probably just look that up online somewhere. Taxes. Oblivions is doing dark beers and pasta dishes, which I don't think are a good combination. I even told Hans and Brewster, I was like, I don't think that's a good idea. And they're like, we don't want to hear what you have to say. And Let's see. It's really muddy out. It's mud and snow and frosty in spots.
Yeah, so I was out working on the mud because farms you just get muddy and
Oh
stuff.
yeah.
And do you know what looked up at me from the mud?
What's that?
Eyes.
Baby goats, I imagine.
Baby goats,
Yeah.
yeah. But when we finally cleaned it off, it's like we call it chocolate chip. It literally looks like chocolate chip cookie dough. It's got its fur is all this sort of buff light brown, and it's got this dark chocolate brown spots all over it. So yeah, we call it chocolate chip.
Okay, cool.
But it was like sitting there saying, it's snowing, and you decided to not realize my mom was getting into birth, and chocolate chips, just gave. I'm afraid that the goat, chocolate chip, gave Earth 1-star review for its first day. It's doing a little bit better now. It's a little happier now. It's all its cousins and stuff. But it was yeah, I'm just gonna give this place a 1-star review.
Okay.
Or it would if it had fingers. I mean, it's got little hooves. So.
Oh, sure, yeah. All right. So, that's enough about Oleander for the week.
So I talked to one of a true, and a person I definitely can call a true friend of the show. Someone's been on quite a bit, but I had never interviewed before, and that's Ken Hite.
Yeah.
Game designer extraordinaire.
Exactly. Yeah.
As well as author, and he told me to tell you hi.
Oh yeah, no, I listened to the interview while I was editing it up this morning, and yeah, no, it was great to hear Ken say hello to DB for me, and I was like, yeah.
And he also said something else.
Oh, okay.
He said for me to tell you, the human race is about to fall, and the rise of a falcon shall grow upon the death of the sun. Something like that. I can't remember exactly, but he said you knew what he said you would understand.
Oh yeah, totally. It means meet him in October for drinks in 2022 for the HP Lovecraft Film Festival in Portland, Oregon.
Hopefully, yeah. He said he's planning on making it this year. I've reached out, so it's probably too early to give out too many things, but I've reached out to another friend of the show, and we're hoping to do something special. We'll hear more as we get closer to the festival.
All right. Sounds good. All right. So what do we got going on this week? We've got Hali. I believe that's where Puff the Magic Dragon is from. And then...
I think that's Hanali.
Oh, okay.
Hanali, that's in the other corner.
Yeah. We've got Ken Hite. For some reason, I had written down that we were going to talk about Kite Man, but we're you talked
Kite Man.
Yeah.
Kite Man. What is it? I can't remember. What is his catchphrase? Damn.
I don't know.
Catchphrase is. I think damn. That's Kite Man's catchphrase.
And then we're going to be talking about Haon-Dor in D&D on D&D, which, yeah.
And no, you're going to be talking about it, and I'm going to be, in this case, not in my head, because I know very little bit about Haon-Dor.
Oh, you know more about Haon-Dor than you think.
No, it's Kite Man's catchphrase. Hell yeah!
Okay.
That's Kite Man's.
That's
Kite Man's catchphrase.
Is that from the Harley Quinn cartoon, or?
I think it's actually kind of been from the beginning. I actually did a thing. Do you know what Kite Man? We go off on one of my favorite tangents.
Yeah.
Do you know what Kite Man's alter ego's name?
No.
Charles Brown.
Okay.
Charlie Brown and the Kite.
Yeah. Okay. Got it.
That's where they got the name.
That's pretty funny. And Kite Man's let's see. He's not a Batman villain, is he? He's
yeah, originally I think he was a Batman, and then like Justice League of Vermont or something.
Okay, because I was like, is he like one of those like Flash villains, or like trying to think?
I think he started out as a Kite Man, but I did something way back when. I think when we were back at Dave's Corner.
Oh, yeah.
Or in the Dave's Underground Goat Shenanigan. I did a whole episode on Kite Man.
Oh, yeah. That was a long time ago.
It's a long time ago,
Yeah. No. It's no. I've been recently watching the Harley Quinn cartoon with Sarah, and Kite Man is in that, and it's like, oh, nice, Kite Man. There's been mention of Kite Man in the Peacekeeper show, and it's like, well, seems like Kite Man is getting some love.
So if you're a hardcore comic fanatic,
Mm-hmm.
that basically tells a story in a very sad, tear-jerking way.
Yeah.
The War of Jokes and Riddles. It has the origin of how he became Kite Man.
Yeah.
And it literally it's a tearjerker.
Okay, I'll have to check it out. That's quite a bit different than how he's portrayed in Harley Quinn, where he's kind of a dumb bro dude.
Yeah, that's how most, and it's interesting. So just throw this out, and the War of Jokes and Riddles.
Yeah.
Is the arc where Bruce Wayne proposes to Selena Kyle.
Oh, okay.
And it's the one thing that he's got to tell her is this story.
Okay.
Because this is something that he personally felt guilty of, and he had to get off his shoulder before he could ask her to marry him.
Okay. Huh. Interesting.
Hell yeah.
Hali.
So, okay. That has nothing to do with what we're talking about.
No.
But this tangent was brought to you by Dave's Strange Trivia.
Yeah.
So, Hali is a thing, is a place, it's a person. Do you know who first created Hali?
I have no idea.
Ambrose Bierce.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay.
So Hali comes in two of Ambrose Bierce's stories. And in one of them is the resident of Carcosa.
Yeah.
And the other is and I want to get this exactly right here. The death of Halvin Fraser.
Oh, cool.
So the death of Halvin Fraser, and this is, I've read it, and I think I've talked about this on the show. I suffer from ADHD. So sometimes I don't get things as well as from reading. So I'm hoping to find an audio copy because I really want to go over the story again.
Oh, sure, yeah.
But you read the death of Halvin Fraser.
Yeah.
And it takes place somewhere in the vicinity of Mount St. Helens.
Oh, interesting.
Now, I just thought of this.
Yeah.
We're kind of in the vicinity of Mount St. Helens.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody, this is the rumor I'm starting.
Okay.
The death of Halvin Fraser takes place in Oleander.
Hey, it works for me.
Or outside of Oleander.
Yeah.
But it doesn't. But I'm telling people that from now on. Now you are listening, know that this is the source. We made it up. It's here.
Yeah.
But so,
I mean, you can see Mount St. Helens from your farm, but
yeah. So who's to say?
Yeah.
So Hali is, strangely enough, Hali is not in either story.
Okay.
But he's quoted in the beginning of each story as sort of a preface.
Okay.
And Ambrose Bierce doesn't say who he is. Just says, one name. And it's almost like he's quoting a philosopher. So it's like, and the reader, even though this is somebody that Bierce has made up, you're supposed to assume it's like, one of those one-name philosophers like Plato, Aristotle,
Yeah.
The Rock, the main philosophers.
Sure.
There. And so he quotes, and especially the one in The Death of Halvin Fraser, he basically says, things can come back from the dead, or no, when things die, basically, they may be good and warm spiritual people on the earth, but after they die, they can become dark and ominous. Now,
which itself is dark and ominous.
Yes. Now I realize that I'm gonna spoil, the story. It's a 135-year-old story.
Sure, yeah.
Now, it may be new to you, so you may want to fast forward a little bit here. But we know that. So it's basically this guy comes up from Napa Valley, somewhere Washington, Oregon, Oleander, Oregon.
Yeah.
And he starts. I'm really gonna have to listen to this because I missed a lot when I read. He starts freaking out, and he starts seeing tombstones, and he thinks his mom killed him, but maybe he killed his mom, and maybe his mom's come back as a vampire or something, and then he dies, and then 2 cops find the body.
Okay, all right.
Now we know for a fact Lovecraft read this story.
Sure, yeah.
Because he mentions it in supernatural horror and literature.
Okay.
So I'm going to say that if Lovecraft read it, we can probably assume Robert Bloch wrote it.
Okay.
So a supernatural, maybe not really, but maybe psychological, maybe crazy, not crazy person who has an Oedipal complex.
Sure.
Sounds kind of like Norman Bates.
Yeah.
So maybe this is, I don't know. I've never seen any connection, but maybe this is something that, and I realized too, that Bloch's cycle, the short story, is not, the movie doesn't follow it completely.
No.
There's a lot of differences there. But maybe this might have inspired Psycho.
Yeah, definitely. Could be a possibility. I don't have to say definitely inspired.
But I don't think anybody's ever done any sort of academic research into that.
Okay.
Then the other, of course, that comes in is the inhabitant of Carcosa.
Yeah.
And this is kind of where, and so this story reminds me a lot. This basically guy's going through, he's waking up, he looks up in this cloud, and he sees the Hebrides and Aldebaran, or Hades, and this is where we kind of connect it with space.
Sure.
But in Bierce's story, he's obviously on Earth because he can see. I don't know if you heard Ralph there.
Yeah, he's like,
Ralph's agreeing.
Earth. I live
because
there too.
He can see the constellations that he's familiar with.
Sure.
And that we're familiar with. And then he goes and he finds a gravestone with his name on it.
Ooh, not good.
And like I said, we know that Lovecraft was greatly influenced by Bierce, but this reminds me a lot of The Outsider.
Yeah.
Now, this is not a completely original idea to Bierce. Edgar Allan Poe had stories like this too, so it's not the most original story, but we can really see, I think, a lot of mythos influence in those two stories. And especially the death of Halvin Fraser, where there is, no matter what's this dysfunctional relationship with his mom, I think Lovecraft probably saw life in that.
Yeah. Okay.
And both of these stories are set off with quotes from Hali. And we never see, Bierce never mentions Hali anymore.
Sure.
He's not a character. He's just this wisdom of occult, is this font of occult wisdom that people can recognize at the beginning of the stories.
Gotcha. Makes sense.
And then Chambers and Lovecraft get a hold of it, and they can make the Lake Hali. Now, the thing about Hali, and you notice a lot of things like Lovecraftian terms, almost every language has a ha and a li sound.
Yeah.
Or a li sound.
Mm-hmm.
So, you can put it together, it could be any language.
Yeah.
So, in Hali, and the Lake of Hali is sort of supposed to, in this huge sea that people kind of describe full of shagas and other things.
Yeah.
On this other intergalactic planet, somewhere, around Aldebaran.
Yeah.
And that's why Aldebaran's so important to Haon-Dor, who is also taken from Ambrose Bierce stories. Now, Lynn Carter kind of tried to tie it all together. And where he wrote that on this planet there was this necromancer named Hali, who's not necessarily the Hali who is quoted in the Bierce stories, but may not. Maybe he's named after, maybe the lake. And he's basically telling people, that they gotta stop drowning people in lakes for the elder gods. So that's basically what I've got on Hali there.
Cool.
And it could be Hali, but yes. So it's both a person and a place. And, and then we start seeing it come up in True Detective.
Yeah.
There's a Lake Hali in science fiction stories by Marion Zimmer Bradley.
Yeah.
Where there's, one of the families is from this planet are the Haon-Dor family. And so we see a lot of people use it, but this idea that it's both this on this planet and another planet in another dimension, and in this person and that person, and maybe that crazy person, and maybe it's just a story the whole time.
Oh, sure, yeah. No, that's cool. I like that a lot. Yeah. Hali, is there anything else we wanted to talk about with Hali? Because
I think that's about it.
Yeah, and something I want to give a shout out to is, if you can find it, grab a copy of Delta Green Countdown. They have some stuff on the Haon-Dor mythos that's pretty cool, and their thoughts on the Lake Hali is pretty cool. I like it in general. And also, if you've been paying attention to the internet, YouTube videos, whatnot, and you've seen something called the back rooms, yellow walls that just kind of seem to go on forever and ever, that are reminiscent of an 80s Days In, or like a conference center from the 80s that it's slowly peeling apart. Dennis Detweiler was doing that in the late 90s, but with Edwardian stuff, which, like, crumbling Edwardian, and that exist on floors that don't exist during the daytime, but at nighttime you can find the night floors, and the night floors just keep going up and up and up and up. And it's part of the Haon-Dor mythos cycle of Delta Green, and I have actually incorporated it. I mean, just like kind of like taking all the stuff from Delta Green on Haon-Dor, and like, yeah, that's canonical in my D&D and in my just regular Call of Cthulhu stuff. But yeah,
So can I throw out another Haon-Dor trivia?
go for it.
That August Derleth wanted to call the Cthulhu mythos the Haon-Dor mythos,
Yeah.
but it was Donald Wondry who explained to him that Lovecraft didn't invent Haon-Dor.
Yeah. Okay. Huh.
So that's why we don't call the Cthulhu mythos the Haon-Dor mythos.
Yeah. Interesting. All right. We'll be back in a little bit with Ken, and then after that, I will be back, and we're going to be talking about Haon-Dor and Gish and all that kind of fun stuff. All right, we'll be back in a bit. Hey, everyone. We are back, and oh, man, good thing it's not too late in the day, because I am enjoying the heck out of this Copper Cow coffee. Churro flavor, working my way through the churro flavor, and then I've got some mocha that I'm really a big fan of. And yeah, there's the salt caramel, they've got the lavender, and they've also got their various tea lattes that I highly recommend. And you know what? I just say, if you even just want like something really nice, like you've got your own little Vietnamese pour over, they have whole bean coffee that I think is worth ordering, and get a subscription for that, and you'll get like 4 bags in a month, and that's for me that's $40 worth of coffee, and plus there's a discount on the subscription. I have to look up how much all that would be, but yeah, just getting your coffee shipped to you so you don't have to worry about it, I don't know, I like that. Anyway, Copper Cow Coffee, thank you for sponsoring the show, and check them out in the show notes along with all of our other really cool sponsors. All right, in a moment, Dave and I will be talking about D&D, and I'll be explaining who Haon-Dor is, and Dave will go, oh yeah, I know that guy. All right, back in a moment.
Welcome to Innsmouth, stranger.
Hi, I'm Rob Whiten from the Innsmouth Book Club. Join me and my fellow guide John Chadwick as we take you on a fortnightly tour of Innsmouth. We visit places such as the Picture House, the Library and Innsmouth Museum to discuss all aspects of weird fiction, whether it be book, film, music, TV or art. As well as that, we stop over at the Gilman House to have a chat with a resident guest. That includes authors, artists, musicians, in fact Lovecraftian creatives of all types. You can find our free shows on Patreon, and there you can also sign up as a patron, which brings you bonus content, plus a monthly PDF copy of Innsmouth News, which features articles, author spotlights, all the latest news and reviews, and more. You can find us at patreon.com/InnsmouthBC. We hope to see you soon, because remember, Innsmouth isn't just a place, it's a state of mind.
Hey everyone, it's me, DB. New sponsor on the show, Glary. Glary offers a great price and better quality goods and services for music lovers. Are you looking for good prices, free shipping, 100% quality guarantee? Glary's got you covered. Guitars, bass guitars, mandolins. They've got saxophones, trumpets, drums. They've got guitar cases, amplifiers, all the stuff that you need without having to break the bank. Inexpensive doesn't have to be cheap. Check out the show notes to find more about Glary. 20-watt amplifiers for under $50. Hard cases for your electric guitar for under $80. Guitars themselves for under $90. Come on, folks, check out the show notes. Get a Glary. Thank you once again for listening to People's Guide to the Cthulhu Mythos. You can help show your support by going to the show notes and following any of the links that'll tell you how to support the show and how to support our guests. And thank you to all of our guests who you can find in the show notes. Rate, review, subscribe, and remember, patrons get priority access to asking us questions, suggesting topics, even, I don't know, submitting stuff. Actually, you don't have to be a patron to submit anything. That's how Dave got on the show, and that's how you can get on the show too. It's the People's Guide to the Cthulhu Mythos. Rate, review, subscribe, tell your friends. Thank you for listening. Back to the show.
And so this is the part of the show to somebody else whose name is not DB, or his initials are not DB. And Ken Hite, a friend of the show, has been on many times with DB. Could you maybe introduce yourself to people who maybe not heard you on the show?
Yeah, I guess for new listeners or listeners who've somehow lucked out, my name is Kenneth Hite. I'm mostly a full-time tabletop game designer, role-playing games mostly. I also do a little bit of writing, some fiction, mostly nonfiction, and amongst the writing that I do has been not just not just Trail of Cthulhu, the role-playing game, Vampire the Masquerade, the role-playing game, Fall of Delta Green, the role-playing game. I worked on the Delta Green role-playing game, but also 4 Lovecraftian children's books from Atlas Games, the Cthulhu Wars for Osprey Publishing. So lots of allied material, I guess is how you put it.
And in fact, you wrote something that is on my top 10 best things ever written in the English language.
Oh my God. You should read more than 14 books.
Transmissions.
Oh, thanks.
I love that. And that has always been, in the last 2 decades, that's always been one of my books I pick up when I need to pick me up. I love high weirdness, and that's the best. Whether you guys are gamers or GURPS or not, if you're into high weirdness, Suppressed Transmissions.
It was a good gig. It was Steve Jackson Games basically gave me a column and said, write whatever you want, just make sure it's in by Friday, and then that turned into a pretty good time.
Yeah, no, I love those. But you got a new project, so tell me about your new books.
Yeah, the new book is the second in the Tour de Lovecraft series. I did a book called Tour de Lovecraft: The Tales back in 2008, which was just me responding mostly to each Lovecraft story and to a lesser extent to the various critics' responses to each Lovecraft story, sort of to give new readers or people who are not super Lovecraftians a leg up, a foothold, something to agree or disagree with, at least to start their critical process. And then that became, people were interested enough in that Stephen Siegel, who at that time was the nonfiction editor at Weird Tales, said, Ken, would you like to do a column in Weird Tales? And you don't have to ask me that twice. So I said, sure. And I pitched him a collection on Lovecraftian settings. And so he called it Lost in Lovecraft, which had a lovely Air Supply vibe. And so I did about a dozen of those for Weird Tales before Weird Tales went through one of its seasonal molting phases. I wanted to finish the series, and we went out and we kickstarted an expanded version of Tour de Lovecraft: The Tales and a all-new compilation called Tour de Lovecraft: The Destinations that would finish that series and then add a few more destinations and sort of setting adjacent concepts like Deep Time or the Swamp or things like that.
Oh, excellent. Now, I know that was a Kickstarter program. Can our listeners still get those books, or?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. You can buy them from the Atomic Overmind Press web store, or you can go to any top-quality game store and some very top-quality bookstores and buy them. They're in hardback right now. I've seen them on shelves, and I've seen very gratifying social media from various bookstore owners and game store owners that are friends of mine saying, look, Ken, your book finally came in. Thanks a lot.
Oh, excellent. And we will make sure that we have some links so that people who are listening can find it.
Wonderful.
Now, as you are a writer, but you're also primarily a game designer, does that give you some sort of affinity or maybe insight to the concept of setting?
I often say that in the role-playing game, as generally understood, the player's job is character, the GM's job is plot, and the designer's job is setting. If you take the great Aristotelian tripos there, that's how it breaks down. So as the designer, I've been preparing settings and describing settings and writing up settings and offering settings basically my whole career, whether that's Star Trek or Lovecraft Country or a post-apocalyptic world of submachine guns and sorcery or whatever it happens to be. That's kind of my job, is to present all the parts of the story that are not either the protagonists, the main characters, or the actual story, the plot. So the setting has been my job, really, as long as I've been doing this business. And so I don't know that gives me any greater insight into it than anybody else, but I think I have a pretty good idea of what works and what doesn't work in a game. And to an extent, that makes me aware when I'm looking at a new property or a new medium. What's the setting? What's the backdrop here? What's going on? And I think that then creates a appreciation for what Lovecraft was doing, because of course Lovecraft, as you know, deprecated character almost completely.
Yeah.
And he thought plot was less important than atmosphere, less important than incident. He plotted very carefully with a lot of his stories, but that was not what the story was about to him, right? The story to him was about atmosphere. It was about the feeling that it evoked in you. And again, for Lovecraft, partly because of his psychology and partly because it's the only thing left in the Aristotelian tripos, that redounded to setting. And so he always addresses setting in some way, and usually in a very deep and layered and meaningful way. And it just always struck me as weird that is not what a lot of people have examined in terms of the literary criticism of Lovecraft, such that there has been. People talk about his philosophy, or they talk about, his autobiography or other things that are fine, but they're not seemingly core to the story in that way.
Or his prose. But I have to admit that I've really been thinking about, since I knew we were going to do this interview, I've really been thinking about Lovecraft and setting a lot differently than I had before.
I mean, that's one of the things. I don't pretend that I did a job that no one could do. And certainly Stephen Mariconda, Peter Cannon, absolutely, Robert Waugh, all of these Lovecraftian scholars have talked about setting and addressed it. But, to sort of ask it soup to nuts, what's it doing in as much of Lovecraft as I can get one book around, I think I'm the first person to do that, which again means that I have a relatively easy job, because I can say all the obvious things, and then someone, smarter than me, can come along and really nail it. But I just feel like that's such an unexplored part of the Lovecraftian, literary work. I'm not talking about arguments over where was Arkham, which are great arguments, by the way, and I'm happy to have them all day. But I think it's more important to ask, what is Arkham? What's it doing, right? As opposed to, is it in Oakham and Greenwich, or is it in Salem and Danvers? Where exactly is Arkham? It's like, well, Lovecraft in his letters pretty much says it's Salem, and that's fine. But I want to know more about that.
Or why? Why
Right.
did he choose this?
Mm-hmm.
Oh. Now you brought it up a little bit, but what exactly is Lovecraft Country to you?
I mean, part of the wonderful thing that Lovecraft did that I don't know if people appreciate as much as they should is that he didn't only invent wonderful, terrifying places like Arkham and Innsmouth and Dunwich, but he also took places like Antarctica and made them mythical. right? He took, the Catskills Mountains. He took a physical spot and he dug into it and he made it a horror setting. He did it with Providence. And now we're so used to Stephen King, for example, having done that endlessly with Maine, or Anne Rice or Poppy Z. Bright doing it with New Orleans, or Ramsey Campbell doing it with the Midlands. We think, well, of course, that's just how you write horror. But the point is that before Lovecraft, very few people wrote horror that way. It was much more a thing that you did if you were writing regional fiction. And Hawthorne does some of it, obviously, in Young Goodman Brown or in House of the Seven Gables. Mackin gets into a little bit. The Great Return, of course, very setting-focused, little bits of The Red Hand, some of his London stories. M.R. James, obviously, is really the only person that I'd put in the same category with Lovecraft in terms of melding the terror and the terroir, if you will. But Lovecraft's Arkham is so much deeper and bigger and more than M.R. James's Burnstow that you can't, you can say, yes, James is doing an amazing, light, delicate watercolor almost job with it. Now here comes Lovecraft with the huge oil impasto, really nailing it down.
Yeah.
And Lovecraft did it so well and so memorably and so importantly that it's been sort of accepted by everyone that, oh, this is how you do it. Now you have Tim Powers' Los Angeles, or now you have Fritz Leiber's San Francisco. That's just how we all write horror now. But we didn't write horror before Lovecraft did it that way, and I think that that's one of the sort of most important things. So I guess my answer to your question is Lovecraft Country is anywhere that Lovecraft looks. And because he is remythologizing the backdrop of Oklahoma or of wherever, or Vermont, he's recreating that, or Providence. He's turning regular America, regular world into Lovecraft world. And that's something that, again, I think that's part of why people respond to Lovecraft in a way that they don't to, Seabury Quinn or somebody who, yeah, all right, so he probably has an adventure set in New York City or Boston or somewhere, but no one cares because that's not the point. The point there is just a little puzzle of how do we stop this weird demon monster.
No, definitely. And even with his love-hate relationship, while you were talking, I was thinking about Lovecraft's New York.
Yeah, it's a
like
example.
like he and
yeah, he, Cool Air, Red Hook, obviously.
Yeah.
They're all very, very interesting and very, very informative uses of the setting of New York City. And obviously, I have a New York City essay in the book. And I'm not by far, New York is one of those places that, for whatever reason, I think I blame the 20th century, that has been paid attention to. David Hayden, of course, has a wonderful book on New York as Lovecraft's psychogeography, that it's his sort of involved nightmare to put words in David Hayden's mouth. But you can look at the the way that he approaches New York, and then you can use that as a mirror or a lens through which to look at his approaches to virtually everywhere. That he has that same weird doubling tendency when he looks at not just New York or Providence or Boston, but also at places he made up. Even at Innsmouth, where you would think, well, that's just a one-note place. Well, it's not, actually. There's elements of that weird fairy tale New York that's at the beginning of He shows up also even in Innsmouth. So it's on a literary, even on a stylistic level, I think it informs you. And then once you look at it and you realize that he's so desperately trying to engage the setting of New York. There's that great bit in the very first bit of Red Hook where he says that Thomas Malone had taken a bet that he would not be able to use New York in any kind of a meaningful, weird story. And he'd lost the bet, but not for the reason that he thought, right? It's just that he can't use it because the story's too horrific. And that's just Lovecraft pinging you and saying, this is setting, this is the important thing, this is what we're talking about. And his letters about New York obviously, explicate that even deeper. But there's just, there's no bottom to that well. And once you start looking at Lovecraft through that setting lens, you find that you can look at all of Lovecraft that way. And then I think at all of Lovecraft's settings, you can, I certainly look at Providence differently than I did before I wrote the Providence essay.
Wow. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to reading those. Now, from Dracula's London, Camp Crystal Lake to even the USS Nostromo. I think that, and I think you may be right. This may be a Lovecraft influence, but horror setting is so important to horror, at least now. And why do you think so?
I mean, I think that a lot of it is Lovecraft's influence. You mentioned Dracula's London, and that's really, it's one of the stronger arguments that maybe this was inevitable and Lovecraft was just, there at steam engine time, as Charles Fort would say. Dracula is a book that is concerned with setting, but in a different sort of a way. First of all, it's a novel. And second of all, it deliberately opposes settings. So Carfax mirrors the Westenra house. Transylvania mirrors London. Stoker is working with all of these different settings and playing with them. And I think some of the result is that although there's a lot of good setting material about Whitby, for example, Whitby is always sort of subordinate to whatever the rest of the novel is doing. That it doesn't really sink in as deep into Whitby as it might if it had just been one long short story, like a novella about Whitby. And I think that would be sort of the difference between Stoker's Dracula, which is, again, very setting informed, and I think is one of the reasons that you began to see, that happen in horror. But I remind you, Dracula didn't really sell. It wasn't a very popular book. Dracula came and it went, and it was sort of ignored. And then the stage play is what brought Dracula back. And the stage play, of course, destroys all the setting because it all takes place in the same stupid house. I mean, this is a whole different podcast if we're talking about how bad that play is. But Dracula's great virtues as a setting-powered horror, I think, become visible to us after Lovecraft in a way that they may not have been visible to Stoker's contemporaries, because of course when they thought of a setting-based novel, they were thinking of like Dickens's London or Trollope's Barsetshire, and so they're looking at a social setting. And Dracula is a disease that is infecting society, but you don't really see a lot of society in Dracula. It's a very sort of hermetically sealed novel, and so the things that they were interested in about setting in the Victorian era were not happening in Dracula. The things that Lovecraft was interested in setting are happening in Dracula sporadically. But I think it takes Lovecraft to sort of pull horror fully into that channel of where regional fiction had been. And people can point out, for example, Sarah Orne Jewett's sort of fantasy tales or dark fantasy, weird fantasy, whatever you want to call it, about Donnett's Landing. Certainly there are similar examples throughout that whole 1890s through 1920s period when horror is being recreated. And to some extent, Stevenson really is who starts it off with the New Arabian Tales, the New Arabian Nights. But I feel like, regardless of how many Aristarchuses there were before Copernicus, Copernicus is the guy who gets the credit. And I think the same thing is true of Lovecraft in this case.
And so I have this theory, and absolutely tell me if you disagree. I think that things are scarier in certain situations.
I mean, I think that's certainly the psychologists would say that and Lovecraft would say that night and the forest are scarier than day and not the forest. Lovecraft has a lot of Tommy Rod about why that is, but you can, assume some sort of evolutionary psychology if you wanted to. I think that night is scarier than day just in general because you can't see as much and there's threats and predators around. And I think that one of the interesting things about Lovecraft is that he doesn't set a lot of his horrors in, far distant places. He talks about Seekers After Horror, Journey to Far Distant Places, but the real horror is your backyard. It's where you look back there and you're like, oh no, that looks wrong now. And Freud, in literally the one thing Freud got right when he talks about the uncanny, it's not the weirdness of the uncanny. It's the homeliness of the uncanny that really messes with you. If it's just strange, then you have no grounds with which to react to it. But if it's like your backyard, but there's a shape there that wasn't there, now you're worried. And, my backyard is in a relatively pleasant part of Chicago. I think that there's probably scarier bits of Chicago, and I think that you could argue that big cities maybe are inherently scarier, Children of the Corn and Dunwich Horn notwithstanding, than little towns. But that's the great thing about a Lovecraft or a Stephen King, is that they can turn those little towns into something scary. And that's really the Lovecraftian lens dropping over setting. I think that, you can talk about cemeteries and Gothic ruins, and you can talk about swamps and forests, and all of those things those are scary. But you can make anything scary if you're good at it. And I feel like what's really scary is recognition, but not. And to some extent, if none of us had ever seen a Dracula movie, if we watched something set in Transylvania, we'd just say, well, it's dark, I don't like that. But we wouldn't be like, ooh, Transylvania, by definition, scary, right?
No, exactly. Now, I really appreciate you taking time out, because I have really enjoyed talking to you about this. But as we're running close to time here, this is kind of the question we'd like to end all of our interviews with. If you could be in charge of any project, any creative project, any medium, you don't have to worry about money, you don't have to worry about copyrights, what is your dream project now?
Well, there's dream projects and there's fantasy projects. I think this is a fantasy project.
We'll go fantasy project.
Don't worry about copyrights and money. But I've been lucky enough to work on most of the IPs I actually legitimately care about. I've done, Star Trek. I've done Lovecraft. What I would like is, this is maybe a little bit of a give back. I would love to, somehow be in charge of the Netflix streaming show that is, a 10-episode adaptation of Tim Powers' novel Declare. I think that I would love to see that done correctly, done as a multi-episode, Tinker Tailor level of quality. And I think that it's just ridiculous that someone who is easily, America's first or second best fantasy author is so little known. And so, I would want to do Netflix or HBO Max version of Declare. I think that would be my fantasy project when you're putting it that way.
Well, I would love to watch that. And again, so where would it be the best place for our listeners to be able to get your books?
Well, obviously, the best place is to go to Atomic Overmind Press and buy them from Hal, my beloved publisher. Failing that, call your area game store, your area special interest bookstore, and see if they have them in stock. And if not, maybe see if they'll order them for you. Can't hurt to throw a little love to your friendly neighborhood game store. We've all seen that small business basically got hit by a series of tsunamis and hurricanes over the last couple of years. So there's someone out there that you would like to still see in business next week. Call them tomorrow and say, I want Tour to Lovecraft, make it happen, and see if that works.
Excellent. And I know our local one here in Portland, they'll even, if they special order something, they'll give you a discount too.
Well, there you go. You can't ask for better than that. So I obviously, if you're one of those electronic people, you can buy the PDF right from Atomic Overmind, and it's in EPUB and Mobi and whatever other formats you want. But the physical book is lovely. It's got cool end papers. It's got a fold-out map of the Miskatonic Valley, done after the style of a 1933 Shell gas station map that I found. I got Mark Richardson, who's a great cartographer, to put that together. So I would say that the physical item is very much worth it as not just as a collector's item, not just as an objet d'art, but also as, the way books are supposed to be. So
it has weight. I love weight of
gravitas,
books.
if you will.
Yes. Or just physical weight. I love the way books feel on my hand when I hold them. That's probably too much information for my listening public. You need to just hold them away from the goats, I guess. Yes, I do. Well, thank you. Anything else you'd like to share before we let you go?
No, just thanks so much for having me on, David. Good to talk to you. Say hi to DB for me, obviously.
I will. He sends his best, and hope to have you on again soon.
All right, fantastic, man. Looking forward to it.
Thank you so much. That is such a good interview.
You're listening to KZOM, Oleander Public Radio.
Hey everyone, we're back with D&D on D&D. I'm one of those Ds. Here's that other D. Dave, what's going on?
I am waiting to learn about Haon-Dor.
Okay.
So it's D&D on HD.
Yeah. So, Clark Ashton Smith, you're familiar with the story, The Seven Geashes, which introduces Atlachna-Cha and Sathagwa and all that kind of fun stuff, right?
Yes. In fact, I went through it, and did I miss it? I went through a PDF and looked for Haon-Dor's name. I did not find it.
What was the name of the necromancer that Falabar Zeus?
I don't know. I just put F. Maybe I misspelled it.
Okay. The necromancer that he went up into Mount Vormith Adreth is Haon-Dor,
Haon-Dor.
the anti-human necromancer, and I don't know if it's like, maybe my source for that is wrong, but
or maybe I misspelled it.
Yeah.
But I did find a fragment
Ooh.
of a story called Haon-Dor or Haon-Dor's Land or something. But he doesn't appear in that one either, apparently, because I controlled that the heck out of it, and I didn't find him. So I'm gonna leave all the Haon-Dor wisdom to you, because
All right. So what I was thinking is okay. So Haon-Dor is high enough level to at least cast a 5th level enchantment called Geas. Magical command on a creature that you can see within range, forcing it to carry out some surface or refrain from some action or course of activity as you decide. If the creature can understand you, it must succeed on a wisdom savings throw or become charmed for your duration. While the creature is charmed by you, it takes 5d10 physical damage each time it acts in a manner directly counter to your instructions, but no more than once each day. A creature can't. If a creature can't understand you, it's unaffected by the spell. You can issue any command you choose, short of activity that would result in certain death. Should you issue a suicidal command, the spell ends. Okay, so I think.
So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, no problem.
What I do know a little bit is about Celtic mythology.
Yeah.
And so Geases were sort of this almost a blessing curse.
Okay.
You know, if you eat dog meat, you will die.
Okay.
But here's the blessing part. You don't eat dog meat, you're not going to die. and the Celtic heroes use that. They go, well, I'm not have to, unless I eat dog meat, I'm not going to die, so I'm going to go out and fight. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of a two-edged sword in Celtic mythology.
Okay.
Now, I know it was a D&D spell, but I've never, in my, literally 4 decades of playing D&D, I don't think I've ever had a player cast the spell.
Oh, yeah. I've used it as, like, something that bad guys do, especially since it, damages you if you do something counter to it. Kind of like command, but, like, hurts.
Okay.
Okay, so what I wanted to talk about is Haon-Dor, the spell Geas, and okay, so what level do you have to be to cast a 5th level enchantment?
I believe you have to be 8.
8th, okay.
Or is it 9? Let me go. So first, okay, so second is 3rd level, right?
Sure.
And third is 5th level.
Mm-hmm.
And fourth is 7th level.
Yeah.
And so we're looking 5th level.
Mm-hmm.
So 9.
Okay.
9th level.
So we're talking at least.
I was told there'd be no math.
A 9th. Oh, I figured you'd just look at a chart. A 9th level wizard of some sort, or sorcerer or whatnot. But we're gonna say
Now
wizard.
That's true. That's I think that's wizard. There are other classes that it would take higher.
Yeah.
I mean, you may have to be a higher level to get to, like Warlock might be higher.
Yeah, I don't think he was a bard, is what I'm saying. So we have like a wizard who practices necromancy and is a jerk who lives up in the mountains. I love this idea this is like kind of a classic idea. It's like the king says, oh hey, Falabar Zoo, or I keep saying the guy's name wrong, but you know who I'm talking about. Go over there and get rid of that necromancer for us. And I love this story so much. It's such a fun story, in my opinion. It kind of pokes fun at like the I don't know, what do you call it? The trials of Asterix or trials of Hercules. Any kind of like demigod dealing with bureaucracy kind of stuff. I kind of like it. It's like, oh yeah, no, this would be like almost like if a Dunsanian hero was sent on a quest, but not quite Dunsanian. I guess it's quite Clark Ashtian, Smithian. But yeah, no, very much Hyperborea and all that kind of fun stuff, or Hyboria. I can't remember who does what anymore. And but no, my thoughts is basing stuff off of like this story, the Seven Geas and Haon-Dor and stuff like that would be fairly easy. And like, we've talked about Alach-Nacha, we've talked about Sathagwa's family, we've talked about various things found in the Seven Geas, and I just like Haon-Dor is kind of like figuring out who Haon-Dor would be. I think would be like just perfect to kind of like turn this story into a D&D. Like, Dave, besides being wanted for necromancy, besides being maybe a reclusive nut who just talks to a dinosaur bird all the time, and Vormi, I can't remember how to pronounce that dinosaur bird name. And, Vormi are the orange Neanderthal type who, honestly, they're just
Sasquatchy.
Yeah. I just am like, they're just Neanderthals or Sasquatches or whatever you want to call them. But no, it's like that's who he has backing him up, and then he has like a bunch of monster gods living underneath the mountain, where he set up shop, and it's kind of like this reverse dungeon. You think you could easily just like walk up and whoop on this dude, and then maybe he uses his familiar to cast through his dinosaur lizard, and then you've got Gias cast on you, and you have to go and do this stupid thing. Oh yeah, I want you to go down and talk to Sathagwa. That doesn't mean it's certain doom. If you look in the Call of Cthulhu guidebook, there's a 50-50 chance he'll eat you. That's not certain doom.
Yeah, and I think as a dungeon master, I'm always kind of reticent to do something that would force a character into a situation like that.
Yeah.
But what I definitely would do was have them cast it on their patron or their friend or their family.
Ooh.
So you're not really taking away the free choice of the character or the player.
Yeah.
But you're still, especially, they're 9th level, and they, this character, raised them or has been married to them since they were 2nd level. You're definitely holding them over a barrel, but you're not using mechanics to control.
Yeah. No, and it's like, say it's like Balavar Sue's, like son or daughter or something like that, a child who, sneaky necromancer Haon-Dor spies picking flowers in the Hyperborean plains, and casts Gias is like, you must speak to Sathagwa and offer your flowers to him. And then it's like, oh no, and, then the dinosaur bird flies over and like tells Zanzibar Gao about like what happened and how his daughter's gonna be eaten by Sathagwa. So he has to go and save her. Fight through the Vormi, fight through this, fight through that, solve a riddle by Lachnacha or something like that. You got yourself a game.
Yes, you do.
Put that thing on slow simmer because you got yourself a game. But yeah, no. And just basically, you could probably just build kind of a base structure, kind of roughly map out where you're going to have encounters at, or what kind of things are happen. Either have it like based off of location or based off of during times, like where roughly things would be. Like if you wanted to do it in like kind of more of a logical location, then always having trolls are right here. I don't know. I guess, I mean, I'm just like, we're not necessarily saying this is how you role play and this is how you do this, but this is a cool idea. And if you wanted to make it like a little bit more, I don't know, crunchy, you definitely could go to the trouble of figuring out like sleep schedules, or like being like, my personal favorite, percentile dice. Using percentile dice to be like, okay, if we go here, the Vormi are probably going to, this much of them are going to be sleeping, this much of them are going to be active. I don't know. I guess that's not something we really talk about, Dave, but how would you handle like patrols and time of day and stuff like that in a lightless environment?
So I tend to, and this is just me.
Sure.
I tend to roll the dice and lie and say, "Oh, look I got a random encounter," and I've had this planned out for months. The one where I do random encounters, tend to be like my cyberpunk people are at a party or a rave.
Okay. Yeah.
And that works out pretty well. I mean, and ever since I think there were random encounters keep in the borderland. So I mean, it's an honored thing. But I would more likely, like in a dark pit, I would have the monster picked out.
Okay.
But have the party make a stealth roll.
Gotcha. Okay.
And you're gonna assume, first of all, I mean, it's a completely different situation. If you're, you've got torches and stuff.
Sure.
Because you're gonna say if people are coming in with torches, all the animals are gonna see it, or monsters are gonna see it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would maybe have it prepared out, but if they don't trip it, if they make a stealth roll.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
Or if they're going across like a rope bridge or something,
sure,
make an athletics roll, see if the vibrations.
Ooh. Make sure that, don't wake up a lot in the Jaws children or anything like that.
Exactly.
Oh man, and there's like Ubo Safla, all that fun stuff. And other thing I wanted to talk about with Haon-Dor is, I said before, why is a necromancer hanging out in a mountain full of Neanderthal Sasquatch people? It's a necromancer. Could be building a skeleton army or a zombie army of Vormi to go attack that kingdom that Falabar Smoo is sent from. I mean, that's, if you have skeletons, I guess they'd maybe be large-sized skeletons.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I would say at least ogre size.
Yeah. I mean, that's not something to sneeze at.
No, no.
And if you have some tribal society that maybe they don't notice if someone gets conked on the head, or maybe Haon-Dor is like, hey, I've got these glass beads for you. Bring me your dead. All you're going to do is throw them on a fire. I've got a much nicer fire, and I'll make sure that they go to their god. And then turns them into skeletons.
Exactly.
And
Or
yeah.
maybe they see him as a god, and
Ooh.
this is to them, this is some form of resurrection.
Oh yeah, yeah, and there may even be some I don't know, might be some of those orange Neanderthals that are able to I don't know, be like druids or clerics of a necromantic god or something like that just assume that Haon-Dor is the emissary of, because the fact that Haon-Dor is far more powerful than a bard or a druid that does necromancy.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh man, I don't know. I've tried playing a bard necromancer. That is a tough gig.
Yeah. What did they play death metal music?
Just dirges mostly, but yeah, they could strum out some death metal for sure. But we're not talking about death metal. We are talking about Haon-Dor, and we're talking about the cave systems. We're talking about Mount Vormith, Address, and what else can you like? It's like I think about like subterranean necromancer access to, like we're talking about a necromancer who has access to eldritch gods, not eldritch gods, but great old ones who are just hanging out. And if you take a couple guards with you, you throw one at Tsathoggua, and then Tsathoggwa's like satisfied, and then you can be like, hey, I'll throw you this other guard if you tell me some more secrets. So you bring four guards.
So yeah, and so and again, I know maybe I hype this a little bit too much, but a warlock, because they've got you've got a couple of different patrons now. You've got the outer god type patron, but you also got I think in one of the latest books, undead. So a really high powerful lich can be a warlock patron.
Interesting.
So on cool. A celestial warlocks.
Yeah.
Celestial. So I'm running like an all gnome. Let's have fun. Don't take it too serious.
Sure.
So there's a celestial gnome warlock, and one of the things that can be a patron in a celestial warlocks are unicorns.
Okay.
So it's his patron is Lollipop, the most powerful unicorn ever.
That's pretty fun.
But yeah, so I think that especially with the eldritch or undead patron, that really fits in well into a warlock. Now, again, I'm not looking at the book, but you may have to be a much higher level to get a geas on.
Yeah, definitely. Which I was just looking at as like the duration is 1 year.
And that honestly, if it's a year, and your players are willing to go into it, that could be a really good campaign origin.
Definitely. Yeah.
Especially if it's their king or something, not necessarily them. But that could be a really good campaign origin for a campaign.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. It's like the king has a geas cast upon it, and the party's job is to keep the king alive while the king goes on what is essentially a suicide mission
through the bowels of the earth.
Or it could be the Geas has to be resolved, not necessarily by the king.
Yeah.
The king just has to make it done.
Yeah.
So that way, maybe he's not a warrior, or maybe he's a smart king. He's like, well, I'll just send these people.
Yeah, but I was like, while the creature is charmed, it takes 5d10 each time it acts in a manner directly counter to your instructions. So if Haon-Dor said, you must walk down and speak with... Yeah. So, I don't know. But yeah, no, I feel like we figured out some ways to use Haon-Dor from Clark Ashton Smith's The Seven Geas. We figured out some ways to use Geases, 7 of them, and I don't know if we figured out 7 different ways to use the Geases. I figured out that Vormi could become large skeletons under the right necromancer, and heck, Haon-Dor could even be a warlock, and people are just misnaming him. But yeah, I think that's pretty good for Haon-Dor.
I think so.
Considering the fact that you didn't know who I was talking about when I texted it to you the other day, so
I think that is very good.
All right, cool. Well, everyone, we've come to that point again where Dave has to go back to his stuff, and I get to turn off all the equipment.
Chip is very putting down on his Yelp review. They are slow at providing milk on demand.
Yeah. Yep. No, I'm going to turn off all this equipment and walk down the hill from the radio station and see if I can't fix that artichoke plant. And remember to rate, review, subscribe, check out Ken Hite's book. What's the name of that book, Dave?
So he's got a couple of books here coming out. And I'm sorry, Ken, I'm looking it up right now.
Oh, I'll cut this part out for sure.
Okay. It is. He's got.
Lovecraft Country, The Journeys? No.
Something like that. You type in Ken Hite's book and it comes up, Clifford the Big Red God and the Book Hounds of London, and I told him I absolutely Tour de Lovecraft.
Yeah, I was typing in Tour de Lovecraft right when you said that. So yeah, check out Tour de Lovecraft by Ken Hite. Links in the show notes for sure. And I'll also throw in a link for any and all of Ken's stuff in general that Amazon has up. And if you buy anything off that, we'll get a little tiny percentage. Nothing to write home about, but hey, every little bit helps. And also every little bit helps if you check out our sponsors down below and help out the show. And of course, we've got the shop in the store where you can get many of the cool t-shirts that we have going on, such as the Raleigh Charles Tell Your Ma, Tell Your Pa, Ship You Down to Sothagua. Sothagua comes up again. And all the various Join a Cult t-shirts that we've got going on. And golly gee, you know what? I think I'm super excited about next week when we're going to be talking about Hastur and Haunting Horrors. Maybe we'll just talk about Hastur. I haven't nailed that one out yet. But everyone, thank you again for listening to us talk about Haon-Dor and Hali this week on People's Guide to Cthulhu Mythos. Keep weird, stay squiggly, and Dave, we'll see you next week.
Yes, we will. Maybe I'll bring Chip on on the air so he can tell you guys just how badly the planet Earth is.
That'd be fun. I'll have to say, it was fun hearing Roy again. I haven't heard Roy for a while on the background.
He's pretty passionate about Hali.
Yeah. All right. Well, so am I. And something else I'm passionate about is getting something to eat, because I need to eat. All right, everyone. We'll see you next time, and goodbye.
Bye.
That was a good episode.
Yeah, it'd be very good, yes.
Written in front of a live studio audience in Oleander, Oregon by D.B. Spitzer and David Heath. Special thanks to Kenneth Hite. Music is always by D.B. Spitzer. Thank you again, and have yourselves a pleasant evening. Goodbye.